Hi everyone. Can everyone hear me? You have to take your earphones. It's what we call a silent conference. So you'll hear me only if you put your earphones. It's a little bit of an innovation that we have here at the Paris Peace Forum. It's great to have all of you here. I'd love to salute the President of Bosnia and Herzegovina. It's really an honor to have you with us today. Commissioner Marta Koch is a good friend. We work very closely on the future of Bosnia and Herzegovina, the European path of the country and of the Western Balkans in general. And we are, this year, 30 years after the signature of the Dayton-Paris Peace Agreement that put an end to a war that ravaged Bosnia and Herzegovina and our whole European continent. And you know, I often think about this because for the last 3 years, we sometimes hear war is back on the European continent with Russian aggression against Ukraine. But the truth is, war has never left our continent. We were just maybe in denial. And 30 years ago, we had a war in the heart of Europe, in a country that's closer to France than Ukraine is. And we were at the time unable to stop it. And we are here 30 years later to talk about the legacy of the Dayton-Paris Agreement, but to talk mostly about the future. To talk about reconciliation, reforms, democracy, civil society, to talk about the European path of Bosnia and Herzegovina, which France supports, which will demand important reforms to the country. And I'm really pleased to be joined here by 4 young representatives of the civil society of the country. You know, if I'm being frank, and because no one can hear me, I will be frank, when we talk about Bosnia and Herzegovina, we talk a lot about communities, groups, and here we'll have individuals, citizens, who want to talk about issues like reforms, like the environment, like economic prosperity, issues that all European youth basically care about. And I want to talk about this. I want to talk about the opportunities of the next 30 years. How do we build upon where we are today? We know that we've just had a difficult year for the country, where some of the shadows of the past have resurfaced. But this can also be an opportunity, I think, to reignite the European spirit in Bosnia and Herzegovina and in the entire region. I want to ask all 4 of you, I've told you before that I hope this can be really as conversational, as open, as frank as possible. You know each other and we want to hear from you. How do you, all 4 of you, look at the legacy of Dayton-Paris agreements? How do you want to build the future? And what do you expect from your leaders and from us in the European Union, from the Commission, from the French government? I'm joined by Emina Pasanovic, who's a youth delegate of Bosnia and Herzegovina for the Congress of Local and Regional Authorities of the Council of Europe. Ivana Korajlić, who is the Executive Director of Transparency International. Ivana Vučević, researcher and journalist who has worked including on the Dayton-Paris Agreement for the Why Not NGO. And Vladimir Andrle, who's the president of the society called La Benevolencija, an activist for human rights and dialogue in the country. Emina, why don't I first turn to you, and then we'll go to the panel. Thank you.
I would love to. We've been advised since the beginning to tell a little about our country, the small and beautiful country in the Balkans. Unfortunately, Bosnia has been known mostly because of the recent war that we had in the 90s and about the tragic genocide in Srebrenica. But Bosnia is so much more than just the recent tragic history. Bosnia and Herzegovina's statehood is rooted in over 1,000 years of continued political and territorial sovereignty. Since its international recognition in 1992, this continuity was reaffirmed by the general framework for peace that was made in the 1990s. Bosnia and Herzegovina, as such, has tremendous, rich past that we need to safeguard, and it's much more that we've had in our recent history. I actually brought a book with me, since they say pictures actually tell 1,000 words. This here, what I have, it's called The Traces of Bosnian Literacy. It was actually given out by the University of Sarajevo, Faculty of Philosophy. Inside, you can see the photographs of documents that prove Bosnia's statehood and history. It is a very interesting book, which you can see later on. I will leave it at the table for whoever is interested about it. But in the context of our future, we want European integration. For us, it means security. For us, it means economic prosperity. For us, it means everything. Because right now, unfortunately, we are burdened by the past still. And because of this past that keeps surfacing up constantly, we cannot turn enough to the future. And unfortunately, the past in Bosnia and Herzegovina is being brought up by political actors who want not to revise the past and to clear out some details that need to be cleared out, the facts, but it's to do so for personal interests. And this is the thing that needs to be said concretely for our citizens. So the political situation is in contrast with how the citizens actually connect with each other, how the citizens live. And because of this situation, it is often portrayed that Bosnia and Herzegovina cannot exist in this framework that we have it right now, because the citizens don't seem compatible. This is what the political narrative is at this moment. But the truth is that we as citizens who come from different ethnic groups, different religions, different backgrounds, we cooperate on a daily level and we live perfectly well by ourselves. We are friends, we are colleagues, we work together in every single possible field of life, in everyday life. But unfortunately, this photograph, this picture is not what goes out to the public very often. I will now give the floor to my colleagues.
I would also have to agree with the issue of what happened 30 years later. As Amina stated, Dayton was signed as a framework for peace. So we got, let's say, follow-up on what should we do, and 30 years later, what we actually did does not really align with the document. Many of the politicians are struggling to let go of the framework, which is basically just a pathway to build a stable, democratic, open society for its citizens. But we can see political actors who cling to the document as it is the most important, most sufficient document for the political system of the country, which we can see is not true. We have issues with institutions. There are so many loopholes in the Constitution. That's why we have issues with functioning of the cultural institutions of the state. We have issues with the legislative system. We have issues with how to prosecute people on which level. And this is something that we maybe as civil society who are specializing in this topic focus on, but we usually disregard that most of the people who live in Bosnia don't really have a necessity to understand this because they are stuck, let's say, in this type of loophole and circle for the past 30 years. And there is no push forward in the socioeconomic sense. Of course, we can always talk about the Constitution. Dayton is very important for Bosnia in the past 30 years. Almost all political topics revolve around it. But the key issue is how to move past these, let's say, populist topics and focus on key reforms that are needed for the basic Bosnian and Herzegovinian citizen to actually live, let's say, dignified life. When we speak of Euro integrations, also politicians usually get lost in the other priorities. We have the 14 priorities. Most of them are focused on the legislative system, but there are also many of them who focus on social rights, who focus on agriculture, culture, who focus on basic economic openness. And that is what is being missed usually. People usually focus on where the headquarters of a state court should be, rather than the fact that on the government level, in the state level, we miss several ministries that will actually help us to go into the European Union. So to talk about 30 years after Dayton is to talk about the clinginess to the Dayton Peace Agreement, but also to a disregard that it's only, let's say, a framework rather than the status quo that needs to be in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Thank you.
Of course, I agree with my colleagues, and however, I always like to go back to the rule of law and the basic structural issues of the country that we need, that all of us need to make more effort to make them work. I do believe that, of course, we should be focusing on the economic reforms. We should be focusing on what makes the citizens' lives better. But if they do not have basic rights being guaranteed, if they are still discriminated against, and we have to face the fact that we still have discriminatory provisions within our constitution, if we do not have basic rule of law satisfied, then we can hardly go forward. This is not, of course, something that is to blame the Dayton Peace Accords and the existing structure. We were supposed to be taking, or at least our leaders were supposed to be taking the responsibility to build the institutions, to make the institutional setup stronger, to strengthen the accountability of local decision-making towards the citizens, and not just to keep expecting that, you know, the international interventionism will keep working, that we will find all of the solutions in the international institutions, and that we will just keep on going like this. And pushing towards keeping the status quo, pushing towards keeping people separated, pushing towards keeping the system segregated, because it is much easier to control the resources, to control the institutions, if everything is specifically and concretely divided. If we do not have, you know, stronger state-level elements of the country, if we still are looking at 10 cantons, 2 entities, and basically separating who controls what on ethnic lines. And this is not really related to ethnic lines and protecting the ethnic interests. It is basically trying to protect political interests and financial interests of the people in power. So I do believe that the solution, and looking into the future, is giving more power to the citizens to demand accountability from their leaders, to demand that things have to move forward, that we cannot keep going like this for another 30 years, that the peace accords was just something that was supposed to enable peace, to provide foundation for the state setup, but we were supposed to be building a stronger country, stronger institutions, and something to have in the future, and not just looking every year in questioning or asking ourselves whether it will fall apart, whether, you know, another new crisis will show up, and whether, you know, the Republika Srpska will separate from Bosnia and Herzegovina, whether we will have the third entity, and this is, of course, being created intentionally so that we do not think about the real problems, the real needs of the citizens, but also so that we do not build Bosnian statehood. And I think that we need to face with the problems that still exist in the country, these nationalistic attempts of dissolving the country and constant threats that citizens still live under.
Well, 30 years after, 30 years after the Dayton Agreement, we are now in the situation that we are having discussions whether the Dayton Agreement was good or the bad for the Bosnia and Herzegovina. I would say it was definitely good because it stopped the bloody war, it stopped the continuation of the genocide, and it stopped the dissolving of the Bosnian and Herzegovinian people in its essence. But what was happening during these 30 years was that the country did not make a progress. Country does not have strong institutions. Country does not have a unique educational curriculum, and this is very important in resolving the past. Past is something what is burdening us. Past is something what is very important for the people, and our politicians, especially those who are ethnic-based or nationalists, know that very well, because they are using trauma, they are using emotions from the past war in order to make people further away from each other, and this is something what, if this continues, is something what will destroy Bosnia and Herzegovina and Bosnian and Herzegovinian society. Now we are having 150,000 people who are discriminated by the constitution, and this is something what cannot happen in the Europe, because Bosnia and Herzegovina and the society of Bosnia and Herzegovina does truly belong to the Europe culturally, geographically, and in any other sense. We have 150,000 people who cannot, who does not have same rights, who cannot fulfill their ambitions if they have one when it comes to the political scene of Bosnia and Herzegovina. We have weak, as I said, weak institutions who does not serve the purpose to fulfill and to help Bosnian and Herzegovinian people to live better. We have economical situation which is very weak. People are very poor, and people don't have opportunities to have the basic existential in Bosnia and Herzegovina. That's why there is a huge brain drain from Bosnia and Herzegovina. We have a huge diaspora all around the world. We have more than 1 million people who are living all around the Central Europe, in the United States, and all around in different countries. And may I say, these are the people who are crucial for the benefit of Bosnia and Herzegovina. These are the people who are young, who are educated, who have skills to help Bosnia and Herzegovina to make a progress. And those people are not here, not in Bosnia and Herzegovina. They are anywhere else. These are the main problems that we are experiencing in Bosnia and Herzegovina 30 years after the Dayton. To answer the question, how I see the future, how I see Bosnia and Herzegovina in 30 years, I can see if the situation stays like this, it's not going to be good. But what we need reforms. We need strong institutions in Bosnia and Herzegovina to build up, and we need rule of law. This is something what is basic, and this is something what we need to establish very urgently. If I may say, we need to establish it now, if not yesterday, in that sense, because the rule of law is going to make people and citizens safe. It's going to give people an opportunity to fulfill their ambitions, to live as humanly as possible as we can live, and in the end, it will keep Bosnia and Herzegovina united.
Thank you so much. And you all talked about the need for institutions and the rule of law, for economic reform, for not clinging to the past and the burdens and the shadow of the past. And I'm actually impressed that there's one question you did not answer, but it speaks highly of all four of you, is when I asked you what you expect from us and from the international community, from Europeans, and you all basically said it's up to us. It's up to our leaders, and it's up to us to take ownership for the future of our country. I will still, though, ask you what you expect from us, because I want to know, I think you all converged on what needs to be done. I want to ask you what you see as the concrete next steps, especially maybe building on the crisis of this year as an opportunity to think about the future, and where people like us, like the different folks that you have here in this room, former Special Envoy Miroslav, the Commissioner, how we can help you get there.
I usually start with saying holding people who do the bad things accountable. I will take the example of Milorad Dodik, who's been prosecuted this year for his crimes. He's now the ex-president of Republika Srpska ND. We've been told a story in the Blaze Strategic Forum by the Minister of Foreign Affairs for Bosnia and Herzegovina, Dino Konaković, of how Dodik became a Russian man in the first place. Now, Republika Srpska, with the administration of Milorad Dodik, was a pro-Russian asset in the Western Balkans, which was proven by many methods that were a copy-paste of Russian Federation's moves and how they deal with democracy and the rule of law, or the non-existence of such things. It started in Sanski Most in Bosnia and Herzegovina when Dodik had an oil refinery, and I will show how this is relevant. He wanted to sell it because he was in big debts, and his partner found a Russian in Moscow who to send this refinery to. When they went to Moscow, they were greeted by President Putin, and Dodik was, of course, very surprised himself that he was greeted by President Putin. Later on, he was given 235 million euros for this oil refinery. And that's how his business with the Russian Federation started. And he started noticing how accidentally, at some point, oligarchs start falling from the buildings, some accidents started happening, and he got scared. And what we've been told in this point is that he's been threatened, both him and his family, for several years when it comes to actually implementing the decisions and orders from the Russian Federation at this point. This is the kind of man that does not care about his people. This is the kind of man that does not care about Serbs in Bosnia and Herzegovina, since the actions of that entity have been exactly the opposite. When we talk about the reform agenda, it was blocked by 2 SNSD ministers. And we finally managed to make it happen, but it was actually about to completely disappear for us as an option. Huge amount of money that would help the regular citizen in Bosnia and Herzegovina, give them opportunities for something else. And how does Europe come into this talk? Giving sanctions on a man like this, putting sanctions, holding people accountable, just like we hold Russia accountable for this war in Ukraine, holding people who are actually deteriorating our constitution, our European path, our European future for all peoples in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Not just Serbs, but Bosniaks, Jews, and Croats, ruining a future for everyone. And this is the kind of people that portray themselves as patriots, protecting the interests of their people, when it is in fact protecting their own interests. And his 800 million euros in Russian assets in Russia and Moscow, led by financial advisors. In that sense, to give support to Bosnia and Herzegovina's rule of law in this sense, that people like this must be held accountable for their actions, seeing them for what they truly are, protecting their own personal interests, and speaking publicly about it. This is the one thing that can help us in this sense. Thank you.
I mean, I wouldn't say that it's so simple, and there are many more in Bosnia and Herzegovina that might be held accountable apart from Milorad Dodik. But when it comes to what our expectations are and what should be done, I agree that building stronger institutions and investing in stronger institutions rather than leaders is the key. Pushing, returning the processes of decision-making of the most important reforms and the most important decisions back to institutions rather than leaders of political parties, making arrangements in hotels and restaurants outside of the institutions, outside of the public eye, or without the any kind of opportunity for anyone to participate and to monitor the decision-making process. Stop appeasing the autocrats. I think this is also something that is very obvious and that we keep repeating, but we still see concessions being given to those that are that are causing the crisis, and then giving them concessions so that they stop in their intentions. We saw that in the example of Milorad Dodik, but some others as well that might be also damaging the country's future, but are not so direct in doing so. So in this way, it will be very interesting to see how all of this develops because of the new world order, I guess, that is being set up now with a completely different attitude of the United States towards the world and also towards Bosnia, removing the sanctions for these key players, but also pushing for and advocating for something completely different than what we saw in the past. In that sense, I think that Europe, or EU at least as such, needs to step up. It needs, although I said that we need less of expectations of international interventionism, but still we need to keep the country in this process because the EU is the only thing now that is giving us some kind of perspective, and everything that leads up to it, including these reforms that we were talking about related to democratic standards, related to rule of law, etc., because we need this to make our country stronger and then to expect to become a member of the European Union. But I think that the responsibility and expectations towards the EU are not now much higher. And it will really be interesting to see how it develops, especially considering that now we do have some authoritarian, let's say, trends and tendencies within the EU itself, different foreign influences towards individual members within the EU. So sometimes our region, not just Bosnia, but the complete region is in between all of these forces, and we become just one of the chess pieces being moved around. For that reason, despite this, I also believe that once we build stronger institutions and democratic processes, that is when we will be able to expect less of the interventionism and being accountable for ourselves.
I would also have to agree. One of the key points that both of my colleagues made is interventionism needs to be on a very, very low level, especially as we have the institution of the High Representative in Bosnia and Herzegovina, which is an international institution itself. And Ivana spoke of building institutions and building trust and building these efficient democratic institutions that can help us make these proper decisions. What we face now in Bosnia, almost every larger issue we have, starting from the digitalized elections to state property, those are issues mostly being dealt by the Office of the High Representative. That was very efficient in the first decade post-Dayton, as it was this, let's say, positive spur for the politicians who actually wanted to do something. So we have the year 2005, which was very efficient in the work that OHR and the politicians did. But now we see that even though these interventions, especially from the High Representative, are efficient, they are only efficient short term. We are left with not democratic institutions, weak institutions, which are mostly governed by people who are after their own interest rather than the interest of the people. So, as Ivana stated, the role of the EU now maybe shouldn't be to intervene, but rather to guide and to create partnerships where partnerships can be made. Because the interventions, as we can see 30 years later, have only created a less democratic country, not a more democratic one. And especially, as previously stated, we now have a different political global scene. Many of the politicians may look for allies in different regions of the world rather than the EU. And that should be also a key point to look for partners who are willing to have the same pathway as the EU does. The citizens of Bosnia and Herzegovina wish to be integrated into the European Union, and maybe that should be the key point of the EU itself.
Thank you. I'll turn to Vladimir, then turn to the room for questions. But before turning to the room after Vladimir, would love to have also Ivana and Emina react on specifically on the question of the High Representative, because you just mentioned, and I know it's of course one of the key issues when we think about the legacy of Dayton and the institutions. So I'd love to have the two of you react after Vladimir.
I think that international community bears a huge responsibility for Bosnia and Herzegovina because, as you know, that any change of the Dayton Agreement cannot be done within the country and within the country's parliaments. It needs to be dealt together with the international community, especially with those countries who were primary witnesses of the Dayton Agreement. In that sense, I believe that I totally agree that Europe should not intervene in that sense into Bosnia and Herzegovina, rather to guide, and this is something what I agree. But I think that Bosnia and Herzegovina can be better if we enter the European Union as soon as possible, because the European Union is going to provide a safe zone for Bosnia and Herzegovina, is going to provide hope for the people, and we know that hope is something what will make people stay in Bosnia and Herzegovina, and we need people, truly we need people to live in Bosnia and Herzegovina. We need reforms in that sense, and while you mentioned the OHR, Office of the High Representative, we need less Office of the High Representative in Bosnia and Herzegovina in that sense. As Ivana said, we need that office to guide Bosnia and Herzegovina rather to impose any kind of the decisions. Why I'm saying that I saw that those decisions which are imposed does not stick. Simply, we have half of the country who does not respect the court of Bosnia and Herzegovina, does not respect Office of the High Representative, and if you take this into account, then it doesn't make sense to impose in the further way. There are ways of non-violent reforms in Bosnia, in Europe. For example, Václav Havel. He was the one who I truly believe it should be a true role model for the European Union, as he was believing that European Union is not only the union of markets or institutions, rather should be a union of cultures and human values. And this is something what we need not only in Bosnia and Herzegovina but also in the whole European Union. We are the family, and at least we are promoting European Union as a union of the family countries, or so to say. Then we have to start to behave like this. Like to have support, to provide support to each other, and basically to have a goodwill to each other.
I would have to disagree in one segment. Now, what is beautiful about this composition of people right here is that we think in a different way, and we have different, so to say, perspectives and views, and that's why this conversation is actually a dialogue about our future. I would have to disagree on the point that half the country doesn't actually respect the decisions of the Constitutional Court. It is the SNSD, Milorad Dodik's administration, that does not respect the Constitutional Court because of the reasons we've mentioned before, because of his personal interest and his personal agenda, who does not work for his people. But I do agree that we will never enter the European Union with the Office of High Representative present, because we are not showing that we can lead ourselves anywhere and we cannot have dialogue by ourselves. But the High Representative reacts in the moment when our politicians and our representatives can't seem to find dialogue between each other. And that's when the Office of the High Representative reacts. So therefore, we ask the question, when will our politicians be able to actually make that deal so the Office of the High Representative doesn't have to react in a certain manner?
And can I ask you, because I think you make a very interesting point, does the fact that he's there make it easier for them not to agree?
Yes. Yes, it does.
The expectations are that the responsibility is then somewhere else. It's not theirs. But at the same time, you also have a person in front of an institution that has so much power within a country to impose laws, to make decisions, but without any kind of accountability. And this is, I think, a precedent, this model that we have within Bosnia and Herzegovina. Of course, we understand why there was supposed to be Peace Implementation Council, and then, of course, OHR as the institution in front of it, as some kind of guarantee of peace in these first years and in this process of state building. And it brought a lot of good, of course, to impose laws that set up the most important institutions in the country, to make the, let's say, basic democratic standards work. But then after that, it was supposed to be withdrawing from this kind of interventionism in decision-making process. And we saw one period of that. Now again, we see the most recent, let's say, high representative imposing decisions that are not even, let's say, within his mandate that is supposed to be. A lot of questions to be made about the interest behind these decisions, I have to say, making undemocratic moves of suspending the constitution, of changing the election law on the election day itself, which none of the groups, I have to say, support. And if we have such kind of interventionism that basically goes against human rights and citizen rights, then we have to ask ourselves whether this is the path it's supposed to be going, or we have to be looking at how to decrease this. And I, of course, completely agree that we cannot go into EU as basically being still some form of protectorate, because we still have a foreign body making decisions on behalf of the local people.
If I may intervene, sorry for this. Constantly we are talking in Bosnia and Herzegovina about changing the politicians. You know, but what was happening in last 30 years that different politicians were ruling different parts of Bosnia and Herzegovina. Different parties were ruling different were ruling in different levels of Bosnia and Herzegovina. So we had right wings, left wings, centrist, liberals, etc. and etc. What haven't changed, the politics didn't change. So in all, what we can notice in all these 30 years, the politics didn't change. People are changing. So it's not only the Milorad Dodik is the problem of Bosnia and Herzegovina. I mean, there's someone said, I'm really sorry. I think you, Ivana, you said that you know, or you said that. There are a lot of other politicians who needs to be taken into account of everything what is bad happening in there. What we need pro-democratic, pro-European politics, which is going to provide us everything what we were saying earlier: rule of law and strong institutions and etc. And I believe, and this is something what is connected with your previous question, what we expect from the international community, from European Union, is to guide us in that sense. To change the politics, to change the constitutions, to change even the Dayton Agreement. I mean, everything is changeable, you know, to make Dayton 2.0, for example, which is going to deblocate all the processes, especially those reconciliation ones, because these reconciliation processes are very important for the future of Bosnia and Herzegovina. People need to get together, even on the political level, because this is something what will ensure the future of these people.
Let me just say one more thing. I would like to quote the document of the Congress. Since I'm a youth delegate at the Congress of Local and Regional Authorities, they actually had a rapporteuring mission on the local elections in 2024 in Bosnia and Herzegovina. So, in one point, in the foreign influence topic, they made a report that Bosnia and Herzegovina, due to its ethno-divisionism, is actually permeable to foreign influences from neighboring states through cultural centers, religious objects, etc. Therefore, I'm just quoting the Congress document. If anybody is interested, they can find it on the Congress Connect site. In general, this is not the only problem that we have, obviously. But I do believe, as we all know it ourselves, actually, on a normal level, we all communicate well, we work well, we cooperate, we're friends, we have fun together, we share so many beautiful things together, but somebody from above keeps telling us that we are not friends, that somebody's actually trying to do something bad to you in a certain sense. And it is no accident that in the 80s we had train connections in Bosnia and Herzegovina, and now we don't. It's almost as if we're actually being kept from connecting with each other. So one of the key priorities I think we should have in Bosnia and Herzegovina is education. Education based on facts and based on reality. Second, connections, infrastructure, that needs to change. So people from small rural communities from all sides of Bosnia and Herzegovina can travel to other cities and see that nobody's posing a threat to them, that it's actually just a false alarm. It's a smokescreen to hide something else behind it. So these key points and these reforms are why we need the EU. We need this support in having good education, in having amazing infrastructure like the EU has. I always say when I come to the EU, amazing train connections. I mean, we don't have to use planes, we don't have to drive cars for 10 plus hours, having fast trains. It's just amazing. And it's amazing that we are being amazed by this in 21st century, you know. So this would be my concluding remarks. Thank you.
And I would just like to say, in the context of everything we spoke on the shift and these building of institutions, the good question, both for the politicians inside Bosnia and Herzegovina, people in the EU, but also the common people, when the political tide shifts, and it will, because that is the nature of history and politics, whether we change the political system in the country, whether we enter the European Union or NATO or whatever, will this clinginess and this type of populism and personal interest gain be worth it in the end? Thank you.
Thank you so much. I will invite Commissioner Koch to conclude, but and I'm sorry because we ran out of time to take questions, but this was, I think, such a worthy and interesting conversation. I really want to thank you because I think you were extremely frank, disagreed on certain points, although I really take your last point, Ivana, that you're all friends, you have fun together, you respect each other, you can have conversation, but someone else somewhere is telling you that you shouldn't be friends, that in fact you're enemies. And I really think that in what you just said, there's a lot of hope. There's a lot of hope for the future to build something else and to build it with us and with the European Union. So I really want to thank all four of you, not only for this conversation, but of course for the hope and inspiration you're giving us and the work that you're doing for the future of your country. Thank you so much. Now I invite Commissioner Marta Koch for enlargement, who spends a lot of time working precisely on the region and the relationship with the European Union.
I hope I can use these microphones. It's okay. So thank you, Emina, Ivana, Vladimir, and then Benjamin. It's really good working with you, Benjamin, on our common topic, meaning bringing Bosnia into the European Union or working on the, if I go broader, unification of Europe. And really, it's good to listen to you. And perhaps you should go there instead of your politicians. You've been speaking about, not changing just the politicians, but also the politics. Yet it's 30 years after the war. 30 years is really a lot. And I would be very happy if we could move things together. But it has started. So, in my numerous meetings with young people in Bosnia, from Bosnia, also outside Bosnia, one thing became clear to me, and they are determined, I quote, not to become another lost generation. And this sentence has become a motivating mantra to me when I work on Bosnia, meaning let's really work together and take Bosnia and Herzegovina forward. 67% of young Bosnians are in favor of EU membership, and they deserve our support. We all know that the constitutional and institutional reality of their country is complicated. Yes, it is true. Dayton has brought peace, but is preventing Bosnia and Herzegovina from becoming a modern state that can function, listen carefully, without international supervision. But let's not forget, in spite of all of the problems, we have seen this country moving forward. When there is political will, the changes are possible. Bosnia and Herzegovina has achieved visa liberalization and also candidate status. And very recent, the submission of reform agenda for the growth plan to the European Commission. And you've been mentioning education, infrastructure. This is €1 billion exactly for this. And my call to action when I was last time in Bosnia has been, how can you politicians take away those 1,000 million from people of Bosnia? It is not the money for you, it is money for the people, for the benefits for the people. And a few days later, we got the reform agenda. Perhaps every time I should go there and do this same, and we get the result. But Benjamin, I take you with me. I'm sure that growth plan, of course, the reforms would have to be implemented, will bring tangible benefits to the citizens. We will also, what we can do, provide cheaper energy, faster internet, and many, many other things. You've been mentioning Dodik. And I'm mentioning that Republika Srpska is much more than just Mr. Dodik. Republika Srpska is much more than their politicians. Republika Srpska is more than 1 million people, different nationalities who are willing to build on common interests. And we would like to see also Republika Srpska engaged on the integration process for the benefits of the whole Bosnia and Herzegovina. And it is encouraging that the Constitutional Court played a crucial role in preserving the country's constitutional and legal order by repealing laws in the Republika Srpska entity that undermined state functionality. Now, with the presidential elections scheduled following the removal of Republika Srpska entity president from the office, Bosnia and Herzegovina is poised for significant political transitions that would reshape governance structures and inclusivity. The accountability of the politicians, Ivana, you were speaking about this. I'm speaking this about loud, and I know that Mr. Dodik doesn't like me. I don't care. You know, this is part of my job. But what I don't like is him speaking bad about Muslims, bad about Bosnians, and bad about any other than himself. And this is not what politician really should do. We have been discussing before, actually every government has a very easy task, easy but difficult at the same time. Do the best for its citizens. That's simple. This I expect from the politicians from Bosnia and Herzegovina. And I think that we all should help to deliver on the EU aspiration of the people of this country, which I really like a lot. It's a great country. In my youth, I have spent many times being there. And that this political energy from the wounds of the past you were talking about will be redirected to the reforms and to the futures of the country. You know, it's not easy to speak about the past. You know, sometimes the wounds of the past are still deep, but it's not good if you put the salt again and again instead of healing those wounds. The salt is there. So we should stop delivering salt to Bosnia and Herzegovina in the sense of for the wounds. So all those who want to advance the EU agenda should really join forces. Thank you, young generation, for being this. And please go into politics. Soon you will have the elections. This is the time. What we need now is, and we have discussed yesterday with President Macron, we need a small thing. 2 laws, and we need a chief negotiator. And dear Benjamin, I have some plans I would like to discuss with you, how perhaps even this year we could move on these plans. And we want Bosnia and Herzegovina to advance on the accession track. And yes, indeed, the accession track is the chance to address the systemic deficits that holds Bosnia and Herzegovina country back. And the progress on the EU path is the best way to deliver on the dreams and aspirations of the people of Bosnia and Herzegovina. European integration really moves in waves, and the next set of member states is getting ready. We don't want Bosnia and Herzegovina to miss out. I was part of the ex-common country. We all live together peacefully. My vision is that, again, we will all live together, this time in the European Union. Thank you.